I set the table for 11 people on Thanksgiving of 2013. Turkey, glazed ham, sweet potato casserole, homemade rolls, the kind my grandmother taught me to make when I was 8 years old, the kind that took 3 hours just to proof, green beans with bacon, cranberry sauce from scratch, 2 pies, a chocolate cake. I cooked for 3 days straight, and not a single person showed up. Not my kids, not my brother, not my sister-in-law. Not one person picked up the phone to say they were running late, or that something came up, or even that they were sorry. I sat at the head of that table in my best button-down shirt, and I waited, and waited, and waited. The candles burned all the way down. I ate alone. And that was the moment, sitting in that silent dining room in Columbus, Ohio, watching the wax drip onto my mother's old tablecloth, that I made a decision that would take me 10 years to fully carry out. But when I finally did it, it shook every single one of them to their core.
I set the table for 11 people on Thanksgiving of 2013. Turkey, glazed ham, sweet potato casserole, homemade rolls, the kind my grandmother taught me to make when I was 8 years old, the kind that took 3 hours just to proof, green beans with bacon, cranberry sauce from scratch, 2 pies, a chocolate cake that I cooked for 3 days straight, and not a single person showed up. Not my kids, not my brother, not my sister-in-law. Not one person picked up the phone to say they were running late, or that something came up, or even that they were sorry. I sat at the head of that table in my best button-down shirt, and I waited, and waited, and waited. The candles burned all the way down that I ate alone. And that was the moment, sitting in that silent dining room in Columbus, Ohio, watching the wax drip onto my mother's old tablecloth, that I made a decision that would take me 10 years to fully carry out. But when I finally did it, it shook every single one of them to their core. My name is Dennis Calloway. I'm 52 years old now. At the time this story really begins, I was 41, and I was what you'd call a quiet, steady kind of man that I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. My father worked at a GM plant his entire life. My mother cleaned houses and raised 4 kids. We weren't rich, but we weren't broke. We were the kind of family where you showed up, where you sat at the dinner table together every single night, where you did not leave people behind. That I carried that with me. After high school, I went to trade school, became a licensed electrician, spent 22 years working commercial and residential jobs across central Ohio. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest and I was good at it. By my late 30s, I had my own small company, just me and 3 guys doing decent business that I'd been married. Her name was Carol. We had 2 kids, Marcus, who was 17 at the time of that Thanksgiving, and Brianna, who was 15. Carol and I divorced when the kids were young, maybe 9 and 7. It wasn't ugly, at least not at first. We tried to keep things civil for Marcus and Brianna's sake. I pay my child support every month, on time, without being chased. I coached Marcus's little league. I drove Brianna to dance recitals on my weekends. I showed up to every school event I was allowed to attend. I bought school clothes, helped with college prep, put money aside that I was present. But here's the thing nobody tells you about divorce when you're the father and the other parent is the primary household. You become the outsider. It happens slowly and then all at once. Carol remarried when the kids were 12 and 10, a guy named Phil Dreyfus. Good-looking, made more money than me, had a boat. And somewhere along the way, in those quiet years, I started getting squeezed out. Not dramatically, not in one big moment, just slowly, gradually, the way erosion works. You don't notice the ground disappearing until one day you're standing on the edge. IT started small, the way these things always do, to Brianna's 15th birthday. I planned a dinner, made her favorite lasagna, garlic bread, the whole thing. Bought her a laptop she'd been wanting, saved up for 3 months for it. She texted me at 4:47 p.m. Dad, Phil's taking us to Easton tonight for my birthday. Sorry. Rain check. Rain check. For your daughter's birthday. With your own father that I didn't say anything ugly. I said, of course, sweetheart. We'll celebrate next weekend. And I put the lasagna in the fridge, and I sat in my kitchen, and I stared at the wall for about an hour. That was the beginning. Then it was Marcus, his high school graduation party. Carol and Phil threw a big thing at their house. Backyard, catered, all his friends. I was invited, technically. I showed up with a card and a check. I stood by the fence for about 45 minutes. Nobody introduced me to anyone. Marcus was surrounded by Phil's family, Phil's friends, Phil's world. He hugged me for about 4 seconds and then disappeared into the crowd. I drove home telling myself it was fine. He's a teenager. He's socializing. It's fine. But it wasn't fine. My brother, Raymond, older than me by 6 years, always the big personality in the room. He started making excuses around this time too. Raymond and his wife, Donna, they lived in Westerville, maybe 20 minutes from me. And for years we'd had dinner together once a month minimum. Then it went to every couple months. Then holidays only. Then the excuses started layering on top of each other. Dennis, we've got the kids this weekend. Dennis, Donna's not feeling well. Dennis, we're actually going to Phil and Carol's for Christmas this year. Wait, read that last one again, that my own brother. Going to my ex-wife's husband's house for Christmas instead of spending it with me. When I asked Raymond about it, quietly, not accusingly, he said, Dennis, the kids are over there. We want to be where the grandkids are. And I understood it. I understood the logic. But somewhere underneath the logic was a message that nobody was saying out loud. You're the extra one, Dennis. You're the one who doesn't quite fit. But what happened next completely changed everything. Let me take you back to that Thanksgiving that I'd been cooking since Tuesday. I do not say that to make myself sound like a martyr. I say it because I want you to understand the kind of effort I put into things. I believe in effort. I believe in making people feel valued. I believe the table is where families reconnect. I personally called everyone. Not texted. Called. Raymond and Donna. Confirmed. Marcus. Confirmed. Brianna. Probably yeah, Dad. My cousin Earl and his wife. Confirmed. 2 of Raymond's kids, my nephew Trey and his girlfriend. Confirmed. 0.7 people confirmed. I said 11 places because I always said extra. Thanksgiving morning. I'm up at 5 a.m. The turkey goes in. The house smells unbelievable. I'm listening to old R&B, doing my thing, feeling genuinely good. Feeling hopeful. 10 o'clock, I get a text from Trey. Hey, Uncle Dennis, we're actually going to eat at Mom's this year. Sorry for the late notice. I told myself, okay, that's 2. Still 5 confirmed. Noon, Raymond calls. Now understand, Raymond does not text. He calls. So when his name came up on my phone, I thought maybe he was calling to say he was on his way. He wasn't. Dennis, listen, I'm sorry. Donna's sister surprised us, drove in from Pittsburgh. We're going to eat here. You understand, right? I said, sure, Raymond. And I hung up one by one. Over the next 2 hours, every single person either canceled by text or simply didn't show and didn't call. Marcus, no response at all. Brianna, sorry, Dad, we're eating at Phil's. It got complicated. Earl, voicemail. Never called back. By 4 p.m., it was just me. I didn't cry right away. I finished cooking everything because I didn't know what else to do. I made the gravy. I made the rolls. I set the table. I lit the candles. I sat down. And then I cried. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind where you're sitting completely still and the tears are just falling and you're not even sure exactly what you're grieving anymore. Is it this day, or is it the 15 days before this one? Or is it the version of yourself that still believed things would get better? I sat at that table for 2 hours, and somewhere in that second hour, I stopped feeling sad. I started feeling cleared. Here's what I did not do. I did not call anyone back and tell them how hurt I was. I did not post on Facebook. I did not show up at Raymond's door. I did not send Marcus or Brianna a guilt trip message. I packed the food into containers, drove to my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, a 70-year-old widow who lived alone, and I left it all on her porch with a note. Then I went home and went to bed early. And I started thinking, the next several years, I want to be honest with you, were not easy on the inside. On the outside, I kept living normally. I kept working. I kept my business going. I kept reaching out to my kids, birthday calls, holiday texts, occasional dinners when they'd agree to them. I kept being Raymond's brother. I showed up when people needed things. And people needed things, let me tell you. 2015, Marcus needed $3,000 to cover a gap in his first semester tuition. I sent it. 2016, Brianna's car broke down. I paid for the repair. 2017, Raymond and Donna hit a rough financial patch. I lent Raymond $8,000. He said he'd pay it back. He did not. 2018, Marcus needed first and last month's rent for an apartment in Cincinnati. I helped. All of it gladly. Because I love my kids. I love my brother. I'm not telling you this to tally up receipts. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand who I was being and who they were being back, because the contrast matters. Because here's what happened at Christmas 2018. I drove to Cincinnati to surprise Marcus. He was 22 by then, working a logistics company. I hadn't seen him in 8 months. I brought gifts, stopped at his favorite childhood pizza place, brought a whole order. When I knocked on his door, he answered looking uncomfortable. Dad, hey, I thought we said we were doing this over the phone this year. We had not said that. There were people inside. I could hear them. I could smell food cooking. I've got people over, Dad. It's kind of a bad time. I stood in that hallway for a moment that felt very long. Then I said, no problem, son. Merry Christmas. I left the gifts on the floor. I drove 4 hours back to Columbus, alone, in the dark, on Christmas evening. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. Spring of 2020. COVID hit. The world slowed down. Everybody got quiet. And in the quiet, things that had been hidden started to surface. I was on the phone with my cousin Earl, the one who'd bailed on Thanksgiving back in 2013. And we were just talking, catching up, and Earl, who has always been a little too honest for his own good, said something that landed like a stone in still water. You know, Dennis, I always felt bad about how Carol and them turned the kids on you. That whole thing Phil started. I stopped. What whole thing Phil started, Earl? Silence on the other end. Dennis, I assumed you knew. I did not know. Over the next 30 minutes, Earl told me what he'd heard. Not from one source, from several over the years. That Phil Dreyfus, shortly after marrying Carol, had made it his quiet mission to gradually paint me as the unstable one, the unreliable one, not through dramatic accusations, but through steady, subtle commentary, little remarks to the kids over years of dinners. Your dad's always in his own world, isn't he? Little things said to Raymond and Donna at those family gatherings I wasn't at. The narrative, slowly constructed, brick by brick, that Dennis Calloway was fine, sure, but a little sad, a little disconnected, better kept at a comfortable distance. And the family, my own blood, had absorbed it. Not maliciously, most of them, just passively. The way you believe whatever story is told most often in the room you're sitting in. I thought about every holiday, every canceled plan, every time Marcus looked at me like I was a stranger, every time Raymond chose Phil's Thanksgiving over mine. And I understood, not just the hurt, the architecture of it. Someone had built a house out of quiet lies about me, and my whole family had moved in. And that's when I discovered the truth, the full truth, about what I needed to do. I was 48 years old. I had about a decade of good, productive work left in me at full capacity. My house in Columbus was paid off. I'd done that quietly in 2018. My business was profitable. I had money saved. I had no debt. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself a question I should have asked years earlier. What do I actually want my life to look like? Not what does my family expect? Not what does my role require? Not what does being a good father or a good brother or a good man demand? What do I want? The answer surprised me with how quickly it came. I wanted to live somewhere warm. I'd always loved the Gulf Coast. We'd taken a family trip to Pensacola when the kids were little, and I'd never forgotten it. I wanted to work less. Maybe consult, do some project-based electrical work, train younger guys. I wanted to wake up in the morning and feel like my life was mine. So I started planning. Quietly. Methodically. The way I approach any big job, one step at a time. Step 1, I got my business properly valued. Then I found a buyer, a young guy named Santos who'd been working commercial electric for 12 years and had always wanted to run his own shop. Good man. We negotiated for several months. In the fall of 2021, I sold Callaway Electric for a number that made me sit very still at my desk for a long time after I saw it in writing. Step 2, I listed the Columbus house. The market was strong. I had 3 offers in the first week. Step 3. I opened a new bank account at a credit union I'd never used. I began quietly consolidating and moving funds. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just organized. Step 4. I found a small house in Gulf Breeze, Florida, a little town right outside Pensacola on the water. 3 bedrooms, a back porch looking over the Santa Rosa Sound. I bought it in cash. I told no one. But what happened next broke them. And I want to be precise about what I mean by that. I did not disappear out of spite alone. I want to be honest about that. I disappeared because I finally believed all the way down that no one was truly tracking me. And I wanted to test that belief with reality instead of assumption. I drove out of Columbus on a Tuesday morning in March of 2023. I had a truck with my personal belongings, not much. Some tools, my grandmother's rolling pin, a box of photos, my father's old watch, my books. I did not post anything on social media. I did not call anyone. I changed my phone number. I updated my mailing address with the post office. I notified the IRS. I handled everything I was legally and ethically required to handle. And then I was gone. Here's what I expected. Maybe a few weeks before anyone noticed. Maybe a couple of awkward phone calls to a dead number. Maybe nothing. Here's what actually happened. For 6 weeks, 6 full weeks, my phone was silent. The new number, known to no one, rang exactly 0 times, which meant for 6 weeks, not a single person in my family tried to contact me hard enough to find another way. 6 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you and say that didn't hurt. It did. Even when you expect something, confirmation still lands like a fist. But I was sitting on my back porch in Gulf Breeze, watching pelicans glide over the sound, drinking my coffee in the morning quiet. And the hurt was manageable, because I was also free. Week 7. Marcus called my old number. Got a disconnected message. He called Raymond. Raymond tried the old number too. Nothing. Here's how I know what happened next. Earl. My cousin Earl, who'd told me the truth back in 2020, was also the one who stayed loosely in contact with me. He had my new number because I trusted him. He'd been horrified by what he'd told me. And in the years since, we'd actually grown closer. Earl became my informant, entirely willingly, because Earl has always had a strong moral compass, and he felt that what happened to me was wrong. So Earl told me everything. Marcus, it turned out, had gotten himself into a financial situation. He'd left the logistics company, tried to start something of his own, and it hadn't gone well. He needed help, significant help, and he went looking for his father. And his father was gone. The Columbus house, sold. Callaway Electric, gone, sold to a guy named Santos. My bank accounts, the old ones, closed. No forwarding information. No new address on file anywhere they could access. Marcus called Raymond in a panic. Raymond called Earl. Earl said, calmly, I think Dennis is okay. I think he just moved on. Moved on? What does that mean, moved on? Earl said, I think it means he made a life for himself somewhere else. Marcus apparently didn't say anything for a long moment. And then he said, very quietly, did he know we weren't really showing up for him? And Earl said, Marcus, your daddy sat at a table alone on Thanksgiving with 11 place settings and homemade rolls and cried by himself. So yeah, I think he knew. Marcus went quiet again. Then he cried. Earl told me Marcus sat on the phone and cried for a while. And that broke something open in me when I heard it. Not triumph, not satisfaction, something sadder and more complicated than that. Because I don't want my son to hurt. I never wanted that. But I also needed him to understand, really understand, what absence costs. Raymond's story is different, and in some ways harder to tell. Raymond, it turned out, had been carrying something he'd never told me. Earl eventually revealed this too, piece by piece. Raymond had always known, on some level, that he'd let me drift. Had always known that he'd chosen comfort and social ease. Phil's world was bigger, louder, more fun, over loyalty to his own brother. He'd told himself the story that I was fine, that I was independent, that I didn't need people the way other people do. And then I vanished, and the story he'd been telling fell apart. He started driving by my old house in Columbus. The new owners had already repainted it yellow. He sat outside it, according to Earl, for about an hour one afternoon. Just sat there. He tried to find me through old work contacts. Santos, who now ran Callaway Electric, told him only that Dennis had sold the business and wished everyone well. That was all Santos knew. Raymond called Earl and said something that Earl said made him tear up. "Earl, I kept thinking Dennis would always just be there. I kept thinking there'd be time. I never really thought about what it looked like from his side of the table. From his side of the table. I've thought about that phrase a lot. Because that's exactly it. Everyone was living their own life, making their own choices from their own side of the table. And nobody thought very hard about what it looked like for mine. Until I wasn't there anymore. I have to tell you about my daughter. Brianna is 30 now. She's got a daughter of her own, my granddaughter, Lily, who I've never met, or hadn't met at the time of all this. Brianna reached out to Earl about 3 months after I disappeared. She didn't want money. She wasn't in crisis. She just said, very simply, that she wanted to find her dad. Earl called me. "Dennis, Brianna's looking for you. You want to talk to her?" I sat with that for 2 weeks. Because here's the thing, Brianna wasn't the cruelest. She was just young, and she'd been in a world where her stepfather was the dominant presence and her father was a peripheral one, and she'd made the easiest choices available to a kid in that situation. I understood that. Kids follow the path of least resistance. That's not evil. That's being human. But understanding something doesn't erase the 10 years of it. I called her on Sunday afternoon. She picked up on the first ring. The first thing she said was, "Daddy." Not Dad. Daddy. The way she said it when she was 6 years old. And I lost it. I won't pretend otherwise. I sat on my back porch in Florida, and I cried into that phone like I hadn't cried in years. She was crying too. We cried together for probably 2 full minutes before either of us said another word. She said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was until Earl told us about Thanksgiving. Dad, why didn't you tell me?" And I said the truest thing I knew. Because I kept hoping you'd see it on your own. Because love you have to beg for doesn't feel like love. It feels like a job. And I was tired of working for my own family's attention. She was quiet. Then she said, "Can I come see you?" I said yes. She drove down with Lily 3 weeks later. My granddaughter is 3 years old with big brown eyes and her mother's smile, and she fell asleep on my shoulder on the back porch while we watched the sun go down over the water. That was the moment that healed something I thought might stay broken forever. It's been about 18 months since I left Columbus. I'm sitting on that same back porch right now, more or less as I tell you this story. The sound is flat and silver this time of morning. A great blue heron just landed on the dock. My coffee is strong. My life is quiet, and it is mine. Marcus and I are in contact. It's careful still. There's trust being rebuilt, slowly, the way you rebuild anything that's been damaged. Not all at once, not with grand gestures, but with consistency over time. He's working again, doing better. I did not bail him out financially when he was in trouble, and that was one of the hardest decisions I've made. But I also knew that the pattern of me providing material help while being emotionally invisible to him had to end. He needed to solve his own problem, and he did. Raymond called me eventually. Earl gave him my number. It took Raymond 2 attempts. First call, he said he just wanted to know I was safe. Second call, a few weeks later, he actually said what he needed to say. He apologized. For real. Not a casual, "Hey man, no hard feelings" kind of thing. A real, sit down with himself. "I've thought about this seriously" apology. "Dennis, I chose easy over right for too long. And I miss my brother. We're not back to where we were, but we're talking. That's something. That's a start." Phil Dreyfus, for what it's worth, is no longer in the picture. He and Carol divorced in 2021. I take no joy in that. I just observe it as a thing that happened like weather. Carol reached out once, very briefly, through Brianna. Said she was sorry if things had been hard. I didn't respond. I don't have anger toward Carol, but I also don't have space for her. Some doors, when they close naturally, should stay closed. And me? Dennis Callaway, electrician, father, brother, quiet man who sets a good table. I wake up every morning and I feel something I spent a very long time not feeling. I feel like I belong exactly where I am, that I've thought a lot about what I'd say if someone asked me what this story is really about. And here's what I keep coming back to. People don't value presence until it's gone. Not because they're monsters. Most of them aren't. but because human beings are wired to take stable things for granted. The person who always shows up, who always answers, who always cooks the turkey and sets the table and sends the money and makes the call, that person becomes part of the background. Reliable, fixed, permanent, until they're not. I'm not telling you to disappear on your family. I'm not telling you revenge is the answer, because what I did wasn't really revenge. It was self-preservation with a 10-year runway. What I'm telling you is this. Your presence is a gift. Your energy is a resource. Your love is worth something real. And if the people in your life are treating those things as guaranteed, as background noise, as a steady deposit they never have to earn, you are allowed to reconsider the arrangement. You are allowed to stop setting tables for people who don't come. You are allowed to build a life in a town where the herons land on your dock and the coffee is strong and the morning is yours. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the people who took you for granted will finally understand what they had. Only after it's already sitting on a porch in Florida, without them. If this story hit you somewhere real, drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever been the one who always showed up? Have you ever had to make the hard decision to stop? I read every single comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you're new here, welcome. Subscribe and stay a while. I'll see you in the next one.